Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Nelson. Here's a look at what's going on this week in the news. We begin with news from the Vatican. During a press briefing after the Vatican summit on the protection of minors, Jesuit Father Federico Lombardi, who served as moderator, told reporters that the work to ensure that laws and concrete actions are in place is just beginning. Some of the initial measures, Father Lombardi said, include the Pope publishing a new set of laws and guidelines concerning child protection for Vatican city-state. Another initiative, he said, that will soon be available is a handbook for bishops that will list a set of guidelines and will help bishops around the world clearly understand their duties and tasks when handling cases of abuse. Father Lombardi said the Pope also intends to establish task forces that will assist dioceses and episcopal conferences that find it difficult to confront the problems and produce initiatives for the protection of minors, especially when they lack the needed resources and skilled personnel. Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, spoke to Catholic News Service after the summit and said it seemed to be effective in getting all the world's bishops on the same page in placing victims and survivors at the center of the Church's concern rather than the Church's reputation and its personnel. The Cardinal also spoke on the witnessing of the victims and the presentation by Sister Veronica Openibu, leader of the Society of the Holy Child Jesus, who also brought up the issue of violence against women and women religious.
I was taken by the remarks of the sister yesterday morning from Africa, who said, you know, we've got this problem. I mean, she was soft-spoken, but she was pretty blunt. And then she went on to say how this is, of course, a problem for the whole church. And she also brought up clearly that there are problems with what has happened to women religious and with women in general, too. I think that this was an important point she raised. As always, what is striking are the statements, the witnessing of any victim. That's what always gets you. For some Episcopal conferences, they may not have seen this so straightforwardly as they showed. We're more used to this in the United States, but that's not true always. And I think that was it was moving, but it was also very powerful. The risen Christ comes with all of his wounds on Easter Sunday night. The apostles are in the upper room because they're frightened out of their wits. It is interesting that Jesus can walk through closed physical space. There's only one thing closed he can't get through to, and that's a closed human heart. And that's what we're trying to work on. And that's not easy.
Despite some of the initial measures by the Pope at the end of the summit, such as the task force and the handbook, a number of survivors and advocacy groups expressed disappointment that the Pope and the Vatican did not go further with more direct mandates, especially in ordering bishops to implement what laws already exist.
Some of the representatives for abuse survivors were present in Rome to listen to the Pope's concluding speech on the Vatican summit against abuses. They reacted with disappointment.
We've been here talking about zero tolerance written into church law. That's what he had to do. It's in his power to do it.
The Pope did not say bishops are responsible from now on, and if they cover up abuses, they will lose their job. He does not speak about the need to financially compensate victims. He does not put any concrete measures on the table. There's no name, there's no date, there's no concrete measures. They are just words and more words. The Pope said we must defend children. However, we already knew this before he even told us. In response, during the press conference, organizers of the summit assured that they are working on proposals based on what they have studied these days to establish other concrete measures in tackling abuse.
And Barrett Doyle of bishopaccountability.org said in a press statement that the summit was only a failure in terms of needed internal reforms. She said in a larger sense it achieved a great deal by increasing global awareness of clergy sex abuse and facilitating connections between journalists and survivors from many countries. In news from around the country, a California lawmaker is proposing a new bill that would require Catholic priests to report to civil authorities if they learn in confession that a penitent has sexually abused someone. The current state law requires clergy and other individuals like therapists to report to the appropriate civil authorities if they have reason to believe someone is the victim of child abuse or neglect. The law makes an exception if clergy learn of abuse or neglect during a penitential communication. The new law proposed by State Senator Jerry Hill, called Removing Clergy Exemption from Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting, would delete that exemption and require clergy to report what they hear in confession as it relates to abuse. Stephen Pahenik of the California Catholic Conference told the Los Angeles Times that inserting government into the confessional does nothing to protect children and everything to erode the fundamental constitutional rights and liberties we enjoy as Americans. And finally in the news, according to a new Marist poll conducted in mid-February, equal numbers of Americans, 47%, identified themselves as pro-life and as those who support abortion. The findings reflect a dramatic shift from a similar poll in early January that found respondents supporting abortion by 55% to 38%. Current proposals that promote late-term abortion are believed to be at the root of the shift. Poll officials said the largest swing came from self-identified Democrats and people younger than 45. The number of Democrats who identify as pro-life is now at 34%, up from 20% in January. And the number of Democrats who said they support abortion fell to 61% from 75%. Young adults in the poll were almost evenly divided, with 47% identifying as pro-life and 48% as supporting abortion. The figures represent a dramatic shift from January's poll, in which 28% of young people said they were pro-life and 65% supported abortion. The poll also found overwhelming opposition to later-term abortions by a nearly 3-to-1 margin, 71% to 25%. The poll was sponsored by the Knights of Columbus. Well, that is all the information we have for you at this time. I'm Kevin Nelson. Don't forget, you can keep up to date on Catholic news throughout the week with Catholic Newsbreak right here on the Catholic TV network.